Hey, this is Meridith Elliott Powell, and it is time for Thrive, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, everything that you need to know to turn all of this uncertainty into a major competitive advantage. And I'm really excited today to be having the Baer on the show. I don't know anybody who knows more about brand and about customer service than Baer. So before we bring Jay on, I want to talk about the fact that we're going to be discussing something really innovative today. We're going to be diving into why speed is truly your competitive advantage. In this show, we talk about what you need to be doing to get ahead. And this is one subject you do not want to miss because it is new, it is innovative, it is cutting edge. All right, let's rock and roll. All right, welcome to the show, Hall of Fame speaker, business growth expert, customer experience expert, Baer.
How's it going, Meredith? Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Super excited to have you here. You know, Jay, I'm a big fan, and the reason I'm a big fan is for a lot of reasons, but when I think of Baer, I think of somebody who is cutting edge, innovative, always one step ahead. I mean, when I look at the books that you've written, when I look at the things that you talk about, you're always on the edge of what is coming next when it comes to how to grow a business or how to improve the customer experience. So for those in our audience who don't know you, give us a little bit of background. How'd you get where you get to? Where did you start? And, you know, how did you become so passionate about the customer experience?
Well, I'm a seventh generation entrepreneur, so that's certainly part of it. My family started being sort of self-employed and running businesses in the mid 1800s. And so I sort of grew up in this culture of customer experience and small, medium-sized business ownership and entrepreneurship, et cetera. My son is an eighth generation entrepreneur. So it's just sort of the pond that you swim in at some level. But I started actually not in that at all. I was in politics. I ran political campaigns as my first career. And then I got into what we would consider to be now sort of digital marketing very, very early. And eventually, when I was about 30, I started running my own companies. And so you mentioned sort of being on the cutting edge. And I guess that's true. But the way I think of it is this. I'm not a futurist, right? I'm not one of those experts or authors or speakers who says, here's what's going to happen in 10 years, you know, trend forecasting. Like, that's not my thing at all. I have no idea what's going to happen in 10 years. But I can tell you what's happening today. And the reason I can do that is I combine my work as a consultant, as a strategist, with really deep proprietary research that I do on a regular basis to understand what customers really need from businesses today. And so throughout my last 10, 15 years, depending on kind of when it was, I've told businesses different pieces of advice, right? So at one point I said, hey, your competitive advantage should be social media, or your competitive advantage should be content marketing or customer service or word of mouth. And now the data show that your competitive advantage can be in speed and responsiveness.
So talk a little bit about the research that you do and how you go about the research and what you're looking for when you're doing the research.
So I start with a premise. In this case, the premise was coming out of the pandemic. I kept hearing all these business trends, the great resignation and quiet quitting, and people not wanting to come back to the office because they don't want to commute anymore. And bleisure travel, which is when you take your kids to the conference, right? Business and leisure travel, leisure travel, and even baseball are 26 minutes a game shorter now because they have a pitch clock. And I thought, you know, all these trends to me sound like the same trend. Which is that we care about our time and how we spend it more than we used to. And I thought, well, if that's the case, there's a lot of lessons in that for business. But every time I write a book and create a new keynote speech, I always want to validate my assumptions with actual research. So I put together very comprehensive, very expensive research, university kind of grade research to validate it. So I talked to thousands and thousands of customers pegged to the US Census and asked a lot of questions about the relationship between responsiveness and revenue. And in fact, it is true. We do care about time and how we spend it more than we used to. In fact, 2/3 of customers say that speed is now as important as price. Knowing that, you might do some things a little differently in your business.
So, when I was reading, and this is all wrapped up in the new book, The Time to Win,
in this
correct?
tiny book, and that is the actual size of the book. And look, I've written 6 other business books that are, regular business book size. But I thought, look, man, I sat down to write it, Meridith, and I'm like, okay, I know how to write a business book, but I can't ask you to spend 5 or 6 hours reading 250 pages about speed. It just doesn't make any logical sense.
Right.
So I said, look, if the whole premise of this book is that companies need to respect the time of their customers more, then I need to respect the time of the reader more. And look, the reality is a lot of people don't read business books. They say they do, but they actually skim business books.
Right.
So I'm just going to take out all the lettuce and the onions and the tomatoes and the pickles and the sandwich, and I'm going to leave you with bread and meat. And that's it. And so that's what we've done. You can read the whole book in under an hour.
Well, I mean, what I loved about when I got the book, what I loved about it is you're really practicing what you preach. I mean, you hear it. Here it is, a book on time is important to people. It matters. We value it. So you made a short book, small book, something I could read. I could read quickly. I can handle on. You talked about the fact that you're not a futurist, but you are innovative. And I think the thing that's so interesting in business today is that the moment that something catches on, like social media, then it sort of becomes vanilla and an expectation. And you do sort of always have to be one step ahead of your competitor. So when you found out speed, a couple of things that I'm interested in with the research is that you talked about the fact that too fast can be good, and too slow can be good. Where do you advise that customers kind of find the right mix for their customers?
Yeah, this idea that you have a window of opportunity that you mentioned is so true. Because anytime you have something that you can use as a competitive advantage, if it's any good, eventually your competition will catch up.
Yeah.
And indeed, I wrote a whole book about social media and business at one point, and nobody writes those books anymore because now it's table stakes. Eventually, the same will happen here. Like in 2 or 3 years, this conversation will be pointless because, of course, you will lean into speed in your business. Everybody's business will lean into speed because your customers will simply force you to do that. It won't be an optional exercise, but it is optional now. And so you have an opportunity. This is why the book is called The Time to Win, which means you have a period of time, a window of opportunity to elevate responsiveness on your list of priorities inside your business in a way that your competition will not. And if you do that, the research shows very clearly that you will get more customers and you will keep more customers. So you've got, I think, 24 to 30 months to make this work for you. And then it won't matter anymore. Everybody will do it, and you won't have the opportunity. But the key to making this work, as you pointed out, is not necessarily to just be as fast as possible all the time. You should probably be faster than you are much of the time. That's true for everybody, every business, probably. But it's too reductive to say, just be as fast as you can always, because there are scenarios when you can be too fast. Nobody wants to go to the fastest tattoo artist in Tulsa.
Right.
Nobody, there's a point at which, like, the company Drift, they make a lot of chatbots, so like a chatbot software manufacturer. They actually program in an intentional 3-second delay in the chatbot, because otherwise, if you type it in, question, it's all AI, right? So they can answer you instantaneously in an eye blink, but they don't, because when they do that, people are like, well, wait a second, that's got to be a robot. That was so fast, they didn't even get my actual question.
Right.
But when they put in the intentional 3-second delay, and it's like an animated ellipsis, like ... oh, something's thinking about it, and then you get the response, people are like, oh, great, now I totally believe it. It's hilarious, right? So you can be too fast. So what you want in your business at every stage of the customer journey, every interaction, is what I call the right now. The right now is the perfect amount of elapsed time. Not too fast, not too slow. It's like the Goldilocks zone for response. That's kind of what you're shooting for.
So it was when you did the research, was it the same geographically? Was it the same generational? I mean, is this pretty much a norm for, individuals? We've reached an expectation of speed.
Yes. I wouldn't say expectation of speed. I would say a desire for speed, and to some degree an expectation, I guess. No geographical differences that are noteworthy. Some and a little bit of gender difference. Men are less patient than women. Big surprise.
Yeah.
That wasn't really a press release worthy finding. However, there were some interesting age discrepancies. And this really surprised me, having been a student of customer behavior for 30 years. The most patient generation, in terms of how much time they were willing to give businesses to get back to them if they got a question or whatever, the most patient generation, Gen Z, the youngest consumers.
Wow, that is interesting.
Yeah, because I've got two of those at home, and I don't usually use patient as the first adjective I reach for, so that was surprising. And then the least patient generation is baby boomers.
Interesting. What do you think is driving that?
Well, baby boomers have less time left.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think mathematically, it's time to be a little less patient, maybe, is my guess, actually. So they're just more frustrated, quicker to anger. So there are some differences in that regard. But generally speaking, it is true that customers will reward businesses that respect their time. Like, the reason this is all true is that we are now in an era where we interpret speed as caring. And we interpret lack of responsiveness as a lack of respect. Consequently, let me say it this way. 1/2 of all customers, 50%, will hire whomever contacts them first, regardless of price. Half.
Wow.
So if you know that to be true, and now you do, in a business, why would you not engineer your processes so that you can always be the first to respond?
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that, I promise you will make more money.
Yeah, make more money, have a lot more price coming off the table. So where does a business start? So you understand now that speed, that speed matters. It's important. It's a competitive advantage. It's a value. Where do you begin the process of understanding? Even if customers don't think you're too slow, even to just speed it up a bit, how do you advise businesses to go about doing
that?
There's
a 6-piece framework in the book to kind of walk you through the transformation. And the one that I really recommend folks start off with is this idea of the got it audit. And a got it audit simply means, how long does it take your customers to get what they need, to get whatever, to get information, to get a price, to get a quote, to get an invoice, to get a delivery, to get a question answered, to get help. Customers need stuff. They need to get it. How long does it take them to get it? And that sounds really obvious until you actually ask a business leader this question. How long does it take you to set up a delivery? And here's what they tell me, Meridith. Well, Jay, usually it takes 2 days. If everything goes perfectly, we could do it in 1. If it's over the weekend, it'll, of course, be 4. If Larry happens to be out of town, it might be 5. And I'm like, whoa. This is not data. This is a collection of stories that you've told yourself.
Right.
And if you're going to adopt this idea of the right now, the perfect amount of elapsed time, not too fast, not too slow, you have to know exactly how long this takes you today. Not kind of, sort of, this is what happens maybe whenever. You got to have a number. So that kind of analysis to figure out the average, the median, the mean, for you to do all the things that customers need you to do, that's the best foundational place to start. Because when you know what today is, when you know what the baseline is, now you can start to optimize against that baseline over time.
So once you have gone through your audit, you're following the steps that you've got. Do you suggest that to use this as competitive advantage, that businesses start to promote this as an advantage, as a value to customers, or is it something you just allow them to experience?
That's a super interesting question that I'm rarely asked. I'm really glad you asked it. It's very smart. If you know you can back it up, yes, you should absolutely promote it, as long as you can meet that expectation. As we talk about in the book, a lot of this isn't necessarily about being faster per se. in terms of shaving minutes or hours or days off of whatever. It's about being faster than customers expect.
Right.
And very few businesses in my research are as good as they should be at actually setting and guiding customer expectations. We make a really dangerous assumption in business all the time. We assume that customers know how long something should take. After all, they bought it.
Yeah.
Well, in absence of you giving them a reasonable expectation, all customers will think all things should be produced instantly.
Mm-hmm.
They just do. So if it's not going to be instant and there's a good reason for it, you need to A, tell them that, and B, really important these days, explain it. Because the younger cohorts, Gen Z, you've probably seen this research, they take nothing at face value. Nothing.
Right.
So if you say it's going to take 2 weeks, they will always ask, why is that? So you might as well just answer the question before they have to ask it, right? So if you know that you can be super fast, like for example, emergency plumbers do this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's a regular sort of cadence. If you call a plumber and you just need to make a look at something, they'll come in a day or two or whatever. But they almost always have top right hand corner of their website. Click here for emergency service. Right. They are promoting the fact that there is the ability to get a plumber or an HVAC person in the middle of the night or on Sunday. Now it's going to cost you. And I think that's part of the contract. Right. But you know that it is viable and doable. But the only reason they can put that on the website is they know they can back it up.
Right.
So yes, if you know that you can deliver, you should definitely promote it. But I got to tell you, I talk about this a lot on stage now. You know, as somebody who grew up in a family of business people, I learned on like the first day I had a lemonade stand, as does everybody in business, you should always under promise and
over deliver.
But when it comes to responsiveness, so often we do the opposite. What we do is we say, okay, I know it's going to take 2 weeks to do this. But I'm going to tell the customer it's 10 days. I know it's going to be at least 14, but I don't want to disappoint them. I don't want to have conflict or angst or ill feelings. We'll deal with the fallout after the fact. And that used to be a decent idea. It used to actually work, but it doesn't work anymore.
No.
Customers have elevated responsiveness and speed on their priority list. And the one thing you can't fib to them about is time, because now they equate time with respect in a way they didn't used to.
Yeah, I would also argue they have a choice. Like, so I came up, the last corporate job I had was in financial services, and it always drove me crazy that when somebody would apply for a loan, then it would go into that black hole of decision making. Yeah. And the black hole of decision making always took longer than it was supposed to take. And bankers would never tell the customer what was going on or what was happening. And then God forbid we were going to turn you down. You'd probably be 3 years older by the time we actually showed up to tell you, but customers were stuck because it was one of 4 banks in our community. You couldn't go online and choose another bank or go somewhere else. I think that they were irritated with us, but they were stuck. And now that switch that the consumer controls the buying cycle, that has really flipped that power.
Well, and that idea, I talk about that in the book. I call it the uncertainty gap.
Yeah.
Which is the difference between what you know about what's going on and what the customer knows about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And we tolerate disrespect of our time way less than we used to.
Right.
And we also tolerate an information vacuum way less than we used to.
Yes.
See, you and I are old enough to remember a time when uncertainty gaps were very common, certainly in financial services and everything, right? Like you remember a time when you couldn't get a car with an app. You would have to call a taxi on a telephone, maybe a payphone for a quarter, maybe a dime back in the day.
Yeah.
And you would just keep pressing 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. And then the guy would be like, this is Lou. Okay. I got to get to the airport. I'm at the Hyatt. He'll be by to get you.
Yeah, right.
And that was all the information you were allowed to have. Like, which taxi is mine? Don't know. Mm-hmm. When's he coming? No idea. What's it going to cost? Won't tell you.
No idea. Right.
All you knew, the only information in your possession, a man named Lou said he'll be by to get you.
Yeah.
That's it. And now you're on Lyft and you've got, to the penny what it's going to cost, to the minute when they're arriving. You've got headshot, license plate number, picture of the car, blood type, like 5-generation ancestry.com printout. You can watch the icon, right? You can coach. I'm like, don't go left, Sherman. It's a one-way, right? Like,
right.
There is no uncertainty anymore. But so many businesses continue to believe that customers will tolerate not knowing what's going on.
Right.
And this isn't about being faster per se. However, it has a massive impact on how responsive it feels.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when you know what's happening, it feels like it's going much faster.
Right. Yes. When you have that information, it's interesting. So years ago, gosh, it's been probably 15 now. My husband's dental practice got flooded out. I live in the mountains of Western North Carolina. How crazy is that? But we had a flood, and historic Biltmore Village, it wiped his dental practice out. When we went to reopen, he went into this high-tech dentistry, and he could do a crown in an hour, which meant that a patient didn't need to come in. There was no temporary. They wouldn't need to come in 3 times. He could do it in an hour. We combined that with the fact that no patient would sit in our waiting room for more than 10 minutes.
Amazing.
And he sold the practice 2 years ago, but he made more money in the last 15 years than he'd made in the 20 he'd been in business before that. And everything was that competitive advantage was people's time.
Well, and in medicine, you don't typically have that kind of speed advantage.
Right.
Not in your core service delivery, right?
Yes.
So I think I actually talk about it in the book that most oral surgeons don't
Yes.
have
Right.
a legitimate speed advantage because they don't have a different mousetrap, right? So
Right.
it is possible. It's great to hear that it is possible, but it's not common, which is why it's so effective, right? You're like, wait, you're telling me that I can come once instead of 3 times?
Right.
Put me in, coach. Yeah, I'll drive farther. I'll pay more. Whatever you want me to do, right? I mean,
right.
Look, the pandemic's part of this. We learned in the pandemic, or we were reminded, I guess is the better way to say it, that nothing's promised to us. Tomorrow's not guaranteed, right?
Mm-hmm.
We each get 1,440 minutes a day, and that's all you're ever going to get. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what you can't buy more, you can't make more. And I will say this. I really believe, now that I've been thinking about this for a couple of years for this book and the presentations and things, time is the only resource in the world that we share equally.
Yeah.
It's the only one.
Sure.
And people are kind of coming around to that and saying, you know what, I don't want to spend 30 minutes each way commuting. I'll work from home.
Right.
And I don't want to go to the dentist 3 times to get a crown when I could just go once.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to accept that time is actually currency now. Like the phrase time is money has been around for decades, which is weird to me because it was never true. But
Right.
it is true now.
Yeah.
And the research in the book sort of backed that up, which is why I think it's a really interesting opportunity for businesses to elevate speed on their priority list and responsiveness, because most of your competitors won't. Your competitors think they're already fast enough, but they're not.
Well, I think one of the most interesting things from listening to what you're talking about, from reading the book, has been that how much, in just watching my own behavior, how much I am willing to pay for speed. Like it really, I walked into the airport the other day and I was flying a different airline. So I should have added my TSA with my clear, and I forgot to add my TSA, and I had to go through the regular clear line.
You should know better.
I know. It was one of those, I switched my ticket at the last minute. I was so irritated. And I thought in that moment, if somebody said, give me $150, I'll move you to the other line.
Gladly.
Jay, it wasn't even a big line. I was going to make it through, but how much that is important, to me, to be able to pay for that access. And the more that the world becomes busier, you look at those poor people in a TSA line or a regular line or something, or whatever they invent after clear, but how much you're willing to pay for that is amazing.
And every business should take advantage of that.
Yes.
One of the key pieces of the framework in the book is called offer a fast pass.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
Disney used to have the Fast Pass. Now it's called Genie Plus, but it used to be called Fast Pass. And it's this idea that you pay more and you wait less. TSA Pre is, of course, a Fast Pass. You pay more, you theoretically wait less. Clear is a better version of a Fast Pass. And we tested this thoroughly in the research and found that 1 in 4 customers will pay as much as 50% more to not wait. And I don't care if you're a dentist, a chiropractor, a preschool, a public speaker, a juggler, a home builder. I don't care what business you're in. If somebody is willing to pay you more to not wait, You should let them do that.
That's right.
You should let them do that. And I talk about this in the book. I was in Vegas and I was at Caesars, and I got there at 2:30 and they said, "Oh, Mr. Baer, check-in time is 4:00. So you can come back at 4 and get keys and hopefully lose as much money as possible in the casino until then. Or if you give us $30 more right now, we'll give you keys." And I thought, well, I'll lose more than 30. So that's a no-brainer, right? So here's my $30. And I'm like, they're offering a fast pass.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to somebody the other day doing a program, and I said, "Jay, I understand what you're saying about fast pass because it doesn't cost me anything more to offer it. It's the same product or service I already sell." I'm like, exactly. So all I have to do is take whomever was first on my list and move them to second. I'm like, exactly. Like, okay, but what happens when the person that you talk to who've got to move down gets mad? So here's what you do. You charge 20% more to jump the line.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say to the person who was first, "Yeah, it's going to be an extra day longer than I said it was going to be. I'm really sorry about that. In exchange, we're going to take 5% off." You keep 15% on the float, and everybody is delighted.
Yeah, everybody's thrilled. It's hard to believe, but we're about at the end of this podcast. I always end with two things. Number one, the easy is, how do people find out more about you? How do they find out about the work? How do they get a copy of the book? And we'll put all of that in the, certainly in the show notes. But what is your biggest piece of advice? I mean, people are out there wondering what in the heck is going to happen in the next year, looking for a way to gain opportunity as the world continues to shift. What is your biggest piece of advice that entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders should be doing to really make this uncertainty really start to work for them?
I've been doing this for 30 years, and I've never, ever, ever, ever heard a customer say, "I've been thinking, and next time it'd be okay if you guys did that more slowly."
Good point.
Speed expectations never go backwards. This is the time to win. Time actually is money now. We will not tolerate companies disrespecting our time in the way we used to. So this is your chance to actually embrace responsiveness in your company in a way that perhaps you haven't. And if you do it, I promise you're going to make more customers and save more customers. Your competition is not likely to do it until they're forced to do it. So you've got 24 to 30 months. I think you should start now. The book will help you do that. It's really easy to read, obviously, because we wrote it that way on purpose. You can find it at jbaerbook.com. Also, the Kindle version is on Amazon, etc.
Great. And how do people find you again?
You can find me at jbaer.com.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. And I encourage you all to do that. It is, again, I've followed Jay for a lot of years. I do want to ask you really quickly, though,
Sure.
about brand and about tequila. And the reason I want to ask is I'm not a tequila drinker. I hope that doesn't, yet. Okay. Thank you. But I love the fact that you've, what kind of intrigues me about it is it's basically another facet of you and a way for people to get connected and know who you are personally. So I follow your work, but it's like through your brands with tequila, I'm getting another piece of Jay Baer. So talk to us a little bit about, obviously your passion for tequila, but why branch that area too?
Yeah. Look, the book I wrote before this one was called Talk Triggers.
Yeah.
It's all about word of mouth and differentiation. And I've also worked in the area of social media and digital marketing and personal branding for a long time. I have said for literally decades, Meridith, that your passions are way more interesting to your audience, even your business audience. Your passions are more interesting than your profession.
I love that.
Period. So most people in business are reluctant to let their freak flag fly and say, "Oh, I love prize-winning roses," or "I like to sail," or our mutual friend Dan Thurman, who juggles and rides a unicycle and plays disc golf. Like, most people don't want to share. It is the case, right? The opposite is the case. It is staggering to me. I've only been doing tequila content publicly for about 14 months now. Mm-hmm. Meridith, I go to events now, And in every single audience, somebody's like, I had no idea you were a keynote speaker, author, and business expert. I love your tequila videos, though.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dang, I should have done this 20 years ago, because it's memorable.
Yes.
And it's approachable. And if there's one thing you want to be in business, regardless of your business, it's memorable and approachable. So you have my permission to talk about whatever it is you love.
Yeah. I think that's so, I love the fact that you said approachable too, because I think that is, the whole tequila piece really put, again, I don't drink tequila yet. But it felt like a different way to connect, to connect with you. And I think that's really interesting with business. And I think more we should open that side of ourselves and allow ourselves, to get people to know us. They'll connect with us or not connect with us.
They can tell when you're really passionate, right?
Yeah.
I've had people come up to me and say, wow, I mean, I know you love business, obviously, and customers and business growth and all that, but boy, I can tell when you're doing tequila videos how much you really love it.
Yeah.
And of course, my poor agent says, hey, imagine how many speaking gigs you'd have if you did 5 videos a week about business instead of 5 videos a week about tequila. I'm like, yeah, I understand. But
yeah, I'm not going to do that. Well, I can't thank you enough. This has been so interesting, so good. I love the book. We're going to feature it on Sales Logic tomorrow morning. It goes really well with what we're going to be talking about there. But as I said, big fan and really great opportunity to have you on here and have this conversation. And thank you to the audience. As always, you are awesome. We'll see you back here this time next week for another episode and another expert of what you can do to turn all of this uncertainty into your competitive advantage. See you next time.